Well, hello everyone. I'm back with a new video on how I created this painting using photobashing. So to start off with, I'm doing thumbnail sketches this time. This is something I typically don't do, but lately I've been getting about halfway through a painting and realizing I just don't like it anymore. It could be for any reason. Perhaps the story wasn't what I thought it would be, or the composition just wasn't that good, or maybe the perspective was wrong from the get-go. So in order to save myself the trouble of throwing away a painting halfway through, I'm going to just do 20 or 30 minutes getting a sketch down. And I'm glad I did, because the original idea is quite a bit different than the end result. I still like the original idea and I might play around with it in the future. I still got these sketches. However, I just prefer this one that I'm going with because it gives a little bit more room for storytelling. But now that I have that sketch down, I'm just going to overlay my photos. I'll just drop the opacity so I can line it up better. And I'm not worrying about any color correction or even the values at this point. I just want to get them all down so I have something to work with. So even though this is like my third video on photobashing, this is still a pretty new process to me. I typically will paint something from the ground up, but I'm very curious about this process because it's meant to speed up your workflow quite a bit. And I know a lot of concept artists in the industry use photobashing all the time because it's so much quicker, and it would be better to have 3 or 4 paintings at the end of the day. I don't know how many is standard for that, but it's better to have several than have one amazing painting that you painted from the ground up. And because it's all about speed and getting the concept down, because your job as a concept artist is to show this is what the world or the character could look like, and now it's your job to create it in whatever world you're doing, filmmaker, game maker, whatever. So it'd be better to have several options that maybe you spent an hour or 2 or 3, whatever, instead of spending 6 hours on one painting that you can say, yeah, I did this from scratch. Isn't that cool? You're like, yeah, cool. Show me some different options. And it's like, okay. So concept artists, speed is the game. So that's why I've been curious about it lately and doing a lot more photo bashing. So hopefully you can learn something from my fumbling around and trying to figure out the best method. And in this case, I am trying something different. The previous ones I've been doing color matching after I've laid down the photos, but I didn't really want to do that here. I just wanted to do something that I will do typically with a painting that I started from the ground up, which I'll start off in black and white generally. And so I just turned every photo into black and white, and I'll plan to add in the color later on when everything is looking good. Now that the photos are down, I'm going to start painting over it to take away detail, especially here in the foreground. I don't want the eyes to be stuck here, and I don't want it to muddle up the painting. So less detail in the foreground, because that's going to be mostly in shadow anyway. When things are in shadow, you're not going to see as much detail because it's the light that will bring out the detail. And so I want the main focus to be here on the wall, and it's going to be pretty well lit up by the sun, the direction of the light. So that's where the primary details are going to be. However, it is still farther in the background, so I don't want it to be hyper detailed. Farther back, the less detail will be shown. And then on top, this is where the story comes to play, in my opinion, is by adding in this extra element where the wall looks like it's been here for a long, long time based off the age of it. And then I wanted to show like maybe a future generation added on these watchtowers using scrap metal, and it's already beginning to rust and fall apart. And maybe this is another generation in the future who have taken over the wall. And it just shows the passage of time. But for a little bit there, it was starting to look like a AT-AT head up there, so I took that away, and I'll extend them down, make it look a little bit more structured. The brush I'm using here just lends itself so well for metal texture. I also used it on the rock, worked really nice for that. I typically don't use it too often, however, for this painting it's working out really well. And you can find this brush for free in my free brush pack, link in the description down below. Because I decided to do this painting in black and white from the beginning, it's now time to start adding in some color. So there's several things that I'll do. I'll do a new color layer and just start painting over it, just get an idea of where to go. And I also did a color lookup table that'll help drop down some of the values and just make it blend in a little bit more. The overall image will be a little bit more cohesive. However, I don't want to just do that color lookup table because it feels a little bland. So then I'm going to add in new color layers and start painting over and seeing what works. So eventually I pull in, well, you saw it there briefly, the original wall, and I like the color of that, so I just color picked it, and I'm starting to paint over the brick texture, or not brick, the rock texture, and I'll try to blend that in a little bit more throughout the painting so it's more cohesive. For this one, I'm feeling like a little bit more muted values or color values will lend itself well to this world. If you do decide to use the method of black and white from the beginning, I think it's important to add in color before you're finished, because there's only so much that you can do with color overlays or gradient maps. It'll work and it's a quick method, but I like to have it blended in a little bit more, because if you were to really look at a painting, you might be able to tell whether or not I use this method. So if I have all the colors that I want to use about 3/4 of the way through, now I can still color pick and actually paint over. It just looks a little bit more natural. At this point, I'm going to compress everything down into one layer, but I want to preserve all of the previous work I've done just in case I need to go back and get a selection of something specific. So I'll hit Control, Shift, Alt, E, and that'll create a new layer with all of your images flattened onto one. And from there, I can take it into different filters so I can have some more fine-tuning control. So I like to bring it into Camera Raw and adjust the shadows, midtones, and highlights. And you just have a lot more control over that there. You can also change some of the textures by boosting the sharpness and so on. And you can't do that if you have all of your layers separated. So it's just easy to quickly compress, and it's not permanent because you still have your old layers on there. From here, I'm pretty much done. I'm just adding in some final details on the wall, make it look a little more ancient, like it's falling apart. And then throughout the entire painting, I'm going to add in some bigger, broader brush strokes to help blend it in and give it a little bit more of a painterly look. If you want more of that crisp photo look, the hyperrealism, then maybe don't do this step and maybe try a different method altogether. That's more of photo manipulation. What I'm going for is that painterly photo bash look. And I just like the style of this more. So hopefully you learned something from this video. Hit that like button if you did. Leave a comment if you have any questions. I'll try to answer them as best I can. And I'll see you in the next video.